Good morning, good afternoon. It is 3 minutes past the hour, so I think it's time to start the session. My name is Brian Marr. I'm the Global Alliance Product Marketing Manager for Veeam. I happen to oversee Nutanix as one of my alliances. I'm here today with Michael Cade. Michael Cade, for some of you might know on the Veeam side, is known to be one of the top global technologists we have. He also has a key focus on AHV, so he's been involved since the conception of supporting AHV for Veeam. Today's session will be all about the Veeam availability for Nutanix AHV. That's a new offering we just announced as of July 26th, so it is available today. We'd like to walk you through and show you some of the key capabilities and what's involved, how it works, the licensing, and also entertain any kind of questions you might have. So to not delay this any longer, let's continue on. First, you're all muted at this time. So if you do have a question, please use the chat box below and put your questions in. We did a call last night, and sorry, someone says, can everybody hear me, first of all? Someone said, has it started yet? They can't hear. Can you hear?
Yeah, we're
okay.
Good.
We're good, perfect. Someone scared me out there. All right, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat box. The sessions are being recorded. The link will be provided to you, and we'll put together some of the Q&As too that we come across. You can listen to them later. So let's continue on. And by the way, thank you for your time. This is going to be the agenda. Don't be nervous about it. It's not going to be that long. I'm going to just briefly touch upon Nutanix's enterprise cloud offering. Obviously, it involves more than just AHV. It's a whole ecosystem. We're going to more focused on the Veeam availability for Nutanix AHV, how it works. Michael's going to do a great job on the demo part and show you the interface and how you use it. I'm going to touch upon licensing and pricing. I also put an extra slide in there that talks about how you can get a 30-day free trial to test it out, fully functional. And we'll do some Q&A at the very end. So hopefully it'll be an entertaining hour that we'll all enjoy. For people out there that have worked with Nutanix, this should be no surprise for you. For someone that's relatively new to Nutanix, this is their product offering and how it breaks down. So this is kind of a bit of a decoder ring for you. What Nutanix has done is they created one of the leading hyper-converged offering that's out there in the market right now. It's all inclusive. And they took great pains to make it a very simple device to manage, to deploy, and in a rock solid architecture. I've had the chance to go to the .next show and along with other Veeam shows, and I actually demoed the beta version of Veeam availability for Nutanix AHV, and customers absolutely love it. Lines of customers saying, hey, save my marriage. One guy actually told me that. He said it saved my marriage. I don't have to come in on the weekends anymore. So it's all-inclusive design that customers really love. It takes a lot of complexity out of IT, and it's broken up by, first of all, Prism, which is the user interface. That's, if you've had a chance to ever drive one of these boxes or manage one of these boxes, you'll see that the interface Prism is very simple to use, very intuitive, and it just makes it even a marketing character like myself could manage it, and that's saying something. Second part, obviously, is the Acropolis part, which is the total turnkey hyperconverged product itself with, networking and compute and storage and everything involved in that. It's very, very simple. But more importantly, I think what gets overlooked is this comms section right here. They designed this whole ecosystem all around applications. So they designed the solution to be really application friendly. because after all, that's what customers buy it for. They don't buy it for looks or the see the blinking lights. They basically buy it to basically run the application. So we've taken all these things into consideration when we designed our solution to provide an additional layer of data protection. I've had customers ask me too, why do I need Veeam? Nutanix has data protection built into it, and they do. They do an excellent job of snapshot technology to be able to restore VMs and work with applications. They also have internal replication. So they do a lot of the things that's very inherited to IT as a whole. What we do is we don't replace that by any means. We actually augment that. We add to that. So what we have done is say they do a great job at snapshot technology. We're going to leverage that. They do a great job of doing the replication, so we're going to leave that alone for now because people haven't asked for it yet. What we do is a lot of customers want to be able to take their VMs and get them out of the cluster. If you understand the clustering technology, everything's contained within the cluster. In some cases, people say, I need to protect the copies outside the cluster. So I would love to be able to put that to a secondary storage device. Or I'd love to be able to have an air gap solution for ransomware. So I still want to use tape. Tape is not dead. Tape is coming back with a vengeance, trust me. Tape, or I want to send some things to the cloud for archiving. Or I want to have the ability to have individual item restores for applications. I want to be able to do a little better job at working on the logs for like Oracle or SQL. So those kind of things are the things we've added to this platform to basically enhance the existing data protection scheme that Nutanix provides. So it's not either or. We don't replace anything they do. What we do is we leverage what they've already done, and they've done an excellent job. So obviously this is Acropolis with networking and virtualization and server and storage. And they support more platforms than this, but these are the three major platforms that they're supporting. Obviously, VMware is probably still their top platform they support for virtualization. Excuse me. Any customer that's involved in a production-based environment, almost all of them say, I run VMware. Or they now are running AHV, Acropolis Hypervisor. I've only seen a few customers running Hyper-V so far. So these are the three major platforms. And what we're finding out is they're Nutanix is a very clever and progressive company. And what they've done is included the hypervisor into the product itself. And so it's free. So it's built into the product itself. Customers have basically tested it. They've done some test and dev in it, and I've yet to hear anything negative about that hypervisor at all. They all love it. What they've wanted to do is they're awaiting in some cases for Veeam to say, I love it, really like it. I'm running, let's say for instance, VMware right now for production. I would love to start deploying it in production for AHV, but I want that extra layer of protection of data availability that Veeam does. So customers approached Nutanix to get us engaged to support it. Nutanix talked to us. In a little over a year, we hired a whole engineering group itself that specialized just for AHV. Now remember, we didn't just tack on existing software to our backup scheme like a lot of other data availability vendors I've seen. We hired people that understood AHV and designed it around their architecture itself. So we see over a 30% adoption rate for AHV for customers. They're over a third are trying. I think it's last I checked was like 35% of the customers have deployed Acropolis. So we've been hearing a lot from you saying, when are you going to come out with it? When are you going to come out with it? Well, I won't say we took our time, but we did it right. Is the best way of putting it. So we took our time, hired engineers, and actually designed something that really goes along with our whole ecosystem. So more and more customers are adopting it. So now we're supporting it. So what we have done is we've taken some of our existing Veeam backup and replication. And if you're a Veeam customer, you know what I'm talking about. The Veeam backup and replication capabilities you all like and deploy every day. And we've we created a special AHV proxy that goes inside the cluster itself and interfaces with Veeam backup and replication. So we kind of joined the best of both worlds. And we also added some Veeam agents, and I'll explain why we did that. Because much like Veeam's been known for, we do agentless data protection, right? Data availability. That's what we do. So you say, hey, Brian, why you throwing agents at us now? You said agents were bad. What we did is when we have customers that want to deploy this technology, some deploy the Nutanix guest tools, some don't. In order to get a nice clean copy of an application, especially for transaction logs and things of that sort, you need either the guest tools or you need some form of an agent. And so what we did is we just included everything into the product itself. So the goal of us was to say, Nutanix is going to market like a cloud provider. They're actually deploying their technology much like a cloud provider because that's what they do. We adapted that model and said, any customer that wants to protect the AHV environment, I better make sure I include everything possible they would need on one line, for they don't have to basically say, oh, I didn't order that, I have to go back and reorder it. We created a package with a one-line SKU that said, when I order Veeam's availability for Nutanix AHV, everything is included, whether I need it or not, and if I might need it, it's there. So we did a one-line item and made it very simple, and I think Michael's going to go into more detail on that too. So this is the scheme itself. We've seen a lot of customers, obviously customers have a mix of hypervisors. That's what's great about Nutanix. You can run multiple hypervisors under the same basic cluster technology. These are the three main ones. So what we have done is now our customers that are running vSphere or Hyper-V now can include AHV into their existing data availability scheme for Veeam. So it's a good thing. So you can run multiple environments under the same umbrella. So a common hyper-availability platform across the Acropolis environment for these three main hypervisors. And we do a lot of the kind of capabilities you've noticed before with the Explorer technologies for applications, to minimize the risk. And we also provide, the RTO and RPO of under 15 minutes we talked about for the entire ecosystem. So customers like this concept because what I've seen is people aren't going to all just jump over to AHV, if at all. They want to say, I want to take part of my workloads from vSphere or Hyper-V and move it over to AHV. So we provide the kind of availability umbrellas that allow them to do that. And we have some very interesting migration capabilities to allow you to say, I want to move my licenses over from vSphere over to AHV. We'll talk about a little bit about that we provide that capability free of charge if you have the right level of Veeam availability. So let's continue on. So Veeam availability for Nutanix AHV, we announced it July 26. Some of you, I had a lot of people. I was at their Nutanix's sales kickoff, and even Nutanix people said, did you guys come out with that yet? And I said, yeah, we did that weeks ago. So I believe we didn't make a big enough splash. We used social media, but anyway, anybody that's out there that's wondering, is it available? Yes, it's available. If you go to our Veeam.com, you'll be able to download a 30-day trial free, and you'll be able to order. It's on the books, and so it's very simple to order. So I have to say, my bad for not making enough noise. So it's available today, and what we did was we focused on three different areas. Streamline management, because remember, one of the things Nutanix is really known for is the really simple to use user interface that makes it very intuitive and easy to manage. So we said, we're going to take that look and feel, that Prism look and feel, and we modeled our product for the user interface to be more Prism-like. Because what we try to do is make it a similar experience. I've seen a lot of other vendors kind of rush to market supporting AHV, and they kind of use their old ugly interface. Sorry, guys. They kind of use their prior interface that might be not as intuitive as Prism. So we hired a bunch of engineers saying, hey, we want the interface to look like Prism because we want to have a common experience. Boom, we got that done, and I think Michael's going to show you that. And then, of course, our whole goal is to minimize data loss, right? So the RPO and RTO in 15 minutes, and I'll give a little more detail about how we do that and what functionality we provide. Now, like I said, this is the first version of this product itself. So a good amount of the functionality is built in this product today, and it's only going to be enhanced as we go forward. So one of the things I'm going to ask you out there, if you're a customer of Nutanix or Veeam, is if you see certain functionality that's not existing today, let us know. Both Michael and I are involved in the roadmap for AHV, second version, third version, and we'd love to hear from you, because we're basically having the customers tell us what other functionality you want to include. And believe me, there's a lot of functionality already included, but obviously not everything that Veeam does is supported on this platform yet. So we want to hear from you. And of course, maintaining business productivity is why you do this whole thing. So what do we do? Well, streamline management. We created a special proxy appliance, a software alliance, of course, software version of the appliance itself, and it goes directly into the Nutanix cluster itself. That allows us to have additional, to really look into the cluster environment and actually leverage their existing native snapshot technology. And that obviously with snapshot technology, you can do a lot of clever things, do a lot more points of, recovery points quicker without disrupting the environment. You can see a lot more what's going on with the Nutanix cluster itself. And it also allows us to extract some Nutanix AHV VMs and pull them out of the cluster itself and archive them and send them the tape and do some very clever things. And this proxy talks directly to Veeam backup and replication. As if you're familiar with Veeam itself, we have a backup, a back-end part called Veeam and replication that says, here's my target, here's my, here's how a repository where I put all the information. So we tie the two technologies together, and the proxy is the key thing that basically communicates to the Nutanix cluster in Veeam backup and replication. Because we have the proxy itself, it allows us to create and configure and schedule backup jobs, much like you've done if you use Veeam today, or restores. But we do that within the Nutanix cluster itself. So it gives us the eyes and ears into the cluster and allows us to do some things within the cluster that you couldn't do if you didn't have a proxy built into it. And of course, we developed a dashboard for that, that visibility that's built upon the Prism look and feel, so you can see all the things you're used to right now, like what VMs are protected, what's not protected, what's the status of the backup repository, what's going on with the events. I mean, all those kind of things you want to find out, like what's the status of my environment. You'll be able to do easily, and a lot of it has to do with basically having that proxy in there. Now, the minimized data loss. We can go in and manage a lot of the VM groups or the protection domains and leverage them and start creating policies. So I think what you do right now for availability or backup recovery policies, every single department or environment might have a different policy you want to do. Maybe some get backed up more often. Maybe some just need to be backed up every now and then. So you can actually create policies based upon their protection domains and say, and actually run it as a business. So we provide that too. So we can schedule on-demand agent-lib backups using their snapshot technology, or you can do on-demand ones. So we provide that capability to say, run it as a schedule, or, hey, I want to do it right now in case someone introduce a change, and I want to make sure I have a nice clean copy. And also we provide basically application consistency. There's our Explorer. If you're familiar with Veeam, we have an Explorer family for Exchange and SQL and Oracle and Active Directory and SharePoint, and that allows us to do individual item restores. So we've taken that capability and built it into the product itself. We can leverage their Nutanix guest tools. I mean, some of you that have use Nutanix technology right now that maybe didn't buy or purchase the guest tools or integrate them, we provide agents to get around that, because without the agent tools, right now you get like a crash consistent copy of applications, and for Veeam and for you, that might not be good enough, especially for transaction logs. So we provide the capability through our agents to be able to get more granular. So once again, like I stated, we try to provide a complete solution and not have to have you order, oh, I forgot to order this, I have to go back. It's all inclusive, and we'll talk about that more. Productivity itself, Obviously, we can do full VM restores to Nutanix cluster, and we can even do like VM disk restores in case you have a total disk corruption. The nice thing about clustering technology that that's the copy the information spread out through the whole cluster. The bad thing about a cluster technology, that same, if you have a bad VM, it's spread out across the entire cluster. So rarely happens in the Nutanix side unless someone basically, purposely introduces like a virus or something. If that's the case, it's really nice to have an outside copy, something outside the cluster at a point in time that I can go off and restore. That's where Veeam plays a critical role, that we can pull that from a point in time, maybe an hour or two beforehand, and introduce it back into the cluster and restore everything. Granular restores, as I mentioned before, for all the explorers. So all the key applications you want. And of course, we also provide a connection to Azure or other cloud providers too, so you can directly restore, these VM backups to Azure. Obviously you want to maybe do troubleshooting or test and dev outside the cluster. So we're going to provide this nice little capability to allow you to manage the cluster itself, and also be able to start putting things out to the cloud or archive or tape for whatever you want to do, test and dev or archive or just compliance. So we add that whole layer of protection, so you can see that we don't replace anything they do, we just augment what they already provided. We integrate directly into the VBR integration itself. So obviously, you can do those backups, offsite quickly using Veeam Cloud Connect and other connections out to the cloud itself. So that's a good thing. And we allow for basically, retention of longer, backup files. So we tape. Tape is not dead. Like I said before, ransomware is a classic example. I can't think of a company that hasn't been hit by it. People want an air gap. Tape is a perfect solution. I said people like Oracle and Quantum are making a lot of money on tape, because people said, wait a minute, having things online with ransomware, and ransomware is designed as anything I see, I'll take out and I'll cripple. If it's offline, obviously with an air gap capability, you now have a layer of protection you didn't have before. And so we now provide tape support, which is not native to a Nutanix environment. So, and also because we do the Veeam backup recovery secondary storage device or backup repository, we can allow you to leverage existing storage out there or servers to provide that secondary, repository itself. So we can leverage that technology because we're very, heterogeneous storage. We can say whatever you got, we can use as a repository. So all those key things we provide. So at this time, Michael's going to walk through how it works. Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, so the concept is around this Veeam backup proxy appliance that we have. So exactly the same proxy that we talk about as that data mover from A to B within VMware and Hyper-V. But with this proxy, it's a lightweight proxy that sits within that Nutanix Acropolis cluster. We just need that one proxy that's going to move that data from the cluster into a Veeam repository. As Brian mentioned, that's why we need to authenticate against that VBR server in place. Now, the most common question that we're getting around this is, do we need more? If we've got a 16 node cluster, do we need to have multiple proxies? And the answer is no. In terms of our engineering testing, is that because of the distributed storage fabric and the intelligence that has about the blocks of data and where that resides, the Veeam backup proxy can go straight to those blocks and pull that data out and push it into the Veeam repository. So the answer today with this version 1 is that no, we need one backup proxy per appliance. So if we just walk through the process of getting that data of those VMs, if we click, so we're initially going to initiate the Nutanix native VM snapshot, and we're going to leverage those to be able to take our backups and push them into the Veeam repository. Yeah, if you click again, and we're going to push that through into the Veeam repository. The key thing here is that we're going to store these backup files in the same portable VBK and VIB formats that we have today within any of our other products. So whether that be a VMware, or whether that be a Hyper-V or an agent, we still store it in that VBK, so that portable file format that we have. So the key thing here, and Brian mentioned this at the top of the session, is the web interface being very Prism-like, and this is where we're going to manage that appliance. We're going to manage and configure those backups. We're going to schedule those backups from this web interface. And as we get through this, I'm going to actually show this in terms of a demo. We're also going to use this web interface to perform full virtual machine restores as well as disk restores. So that's the fast recovery. That's how we get things back up and running as fast as possible. If, however, we need to go into being more granular, that's when we need to transfer over to the Veeam backup and replication server. With that interface, you get exactly the same recovery options that we have with our other backup files. So this is where we would have to perform those file level recoveries for both Windows and Linux, as well as application item level recovery. What it also gives us the ability to do is allow us to use backup copy functionality. So being able to send that data for longer term retention off into a different disk type, or potentially off to a cloud provider, a Cloud Connect service provider as a backup as a service. What it also opens the door is the ability to send it off to tape or archive it into cloud. One of the things that's coming in update 4 at the end of the year is the ability to offload those longer term retentions into object storage, AWS S3, Microsoft Azure Blob Storage. It gives us the ability to extend the availability of that data. So as I mentioned, it's really, we'd have to use our already proven tools to be able to go into those Exchange, SharePoint, Active Directory, etc., to be able to perform granular level recovery against those backups, as well as the guest files. And with that, can you pass me the ball, Brian, and I will jump into
on its way.
Okay, so the first thing I want to point out that I didn't point out on the last WebEx is, so how do we get this? How do you get this if you wanted to have a look and play around with this in a test environment or within your environment? So it's very simple. So from veeam.com, we've got the ability to download this VMDK, and you'll see the user guides in various different formats that you can look at. It's quite an extensive user guide. Also, you'll see a 30-day trial there. So in exactly the same fashion that we have 30-day trials for all of our products, this is exactly how you can get that. And that will request that trial key, and it's a license file, and I can show you where that's put in. And the user guide runs through that from a more granular perspective. But the most important thing is, so then when we come to deploy it, so if we jump over into our Prism, so I'm using the Nutanix Community Edition just because I haven't got a full-blown Nutanix cluster. So if I jump into here, and it's a very basic installation just for demo purposes, but ultimately what I have is my proxy deployed in here. So you'll see this Veeam backup proxy appliance, which consists of its CPU cores, its memory, and again, the best practice guide or the user guide goes through as to what that should be and how that looks. Also, I've got my workload, my 2016 virtual machine. When you deploy this comes up and it requires a DHCP. There are steps again in the user guide that allows you to just go in there and set that static IP address. So with that, then we can go and look at our new console. So the first initial interface is obviously the login page. So we get the credentials. The default is admin. Once we get into this, then you're going to start to see what the new HTML5 interface looks like from this perspective. So the first screen is the dashboard. So this is going to give you a visual snapshot of what the environment is doing at the moment. So I mentioned around this being a small environment, but over in the top left-hand corner, you can see that we've got 3 virtual machines. You just saw them in the Prism interface. You'll see the job status. So in this environment, I have 1 job configured, and at the moment it's running idle. I have 1 repository available that I can store these backups to, the backup server status. So that link between to be able to see those backup repositories, that's in a good state, and that comes up in a traffic light system if it's not there or available. Over on the right hand side, you'll see 24-hour event log. So what's happened over the last 24 hours. If I jump now into the configuration piece, you'll see the infrastructure settings. So this is really where we add in that VBR server. And just to point out, this requires, the VBR server requires 9.5 update 3A, which was just released at the back end of July. It will tell you if you try and point this to another one that this is not supported, or it will at least give you the information of why it's not connecting. Then from here we can also import backups. So if you've got a VBR server that's already been in control of an AHV cluster, we can import those backups into this interface at that point. Then we need to add in our clusters. So our Nutanix AHV cluster, again, we just add that in there using the cluster management IP. And then finally, we've got the appliance settings. So this actual backup proxy appliance is a very small appliance within the AHV cluster. It takes a few minutes to really spin that up and be back up and running. So the most important bit here is that we don't protect that proxy to a certain degree, but in here we've got the ability to do a config backup and send that to a location so that you've got the configuration at least if anything was to happen. This is obviously where you can control that reboot, that shutdown, and support bundles if you were to experience any support issues. The license that we've just mentioned, that 30-day license or a paid-for license, is very simple. It's installed the license here and off it goes, it starts working. We can also do things around network, the security, the time zone, and any updates that come down from that. So with that is then the backup job. So again, what we wanted to do is keep this as simple as possible. So going in line with what we do with Veeam backup and replication, we needed to make the backup wizard very easy and easy to use and wizard driven. So if we take this existing, we can obviously add and create and start this job as and when we want to, but it's very wizard driven, very simple. So we give it a name, we choose the VMs that we want to protect. You'll see here, this is my cluster, this is my AHV cluster IP address at the top, and you'll see these unprotected VMs. Now you saw the Veeam backup proxy appliance. If we were to tick that, we will be able to protect it, but it just doesn't need to be included in that job. And then this is another demo. One thing I haven't got in the demo is the ability to leverage the protection domains that AHV have potentially already had created. So whether that's a gold, silver, bronze type approach, we can absolutely leverage those. So if you're an AHV customer and you've been using AHV and you've been using the protection domains to natively keep a snapshot retention within the AHV cluster for fast recovery point objectives, then we can leverage that same schedule and snapshot schedule on that and snapshot retention. The dynamic mode that you see down here is simply because if virtual machines are moving between those tiers, then we can also be aware of that. So if a virtual machine moves from gold to silver or gold to bronze at a month end, for example, then we will be dynamic enough not to have to go and take a full backup from that point and then be able to continue. And if anything's removed as well, we can adhere to that. So then we need to choose that backup repository. So I mentioned around that's why we're authenticating against that VBR server. You get to see the free space and everything that's around that. And we can also set another caveat around backup file maintenance. So how many, if we wanted to remove any deleted VMs that happened in the AHV cluster, we can actually remove them from our backup set at that point as well. And then a very simple schedule. For demo purposes, I'm running this job on the hour every hour, but this could obviously be daily or monthly at this time. And you can have several jobs that hit the same machine, so you get the dailies and the monthlies if that's what you want to achieve from here. And then obviously your restore point, how many backups do we want to keep? And I'll show you how that looks in the repository as well as we get through. So I'm going to just kickstart that. So as this job is running, you get an interface, a summary interface, and those that are familiar with Veeam backup and replication, this looks familiar in terms of job progress, the summary, the data, and the status of that. And what this is doing is going to take all the incremental changes. We've got change bot tracking configured on the AHV cluster, so we're only going to take what we need or what's changed since the last backup at this point. So as this is a demo lab, there's not much that's changed, so you'll probably see that this flies through with minimal amount of transferred data. So from that, if we jump over to what that looks like within Veeam backup and replication, so you'll now see under backup, you'll see this concept of a Nutanix policy. And those that remember how Veeam endpoint first came and integrated into Veeam backup and replication, there was very little control that you had specifically around the job here. So we can delete the job as an admin, we can disable that, but we can also look at the statistics. But what we can't do is we can't change the schedule from VBR in this version 1 product. But what we can do is get the insights. So you'll see that the transferred data looks exactly the same as what we just saw on that previous screen, and you get to see the steps that we're running through from that point of view to be able to see what's happening. From here though, what this allows us to do is then, if we wanted to send that off to a different location, then we've got the concept of a backup copy of that Nutanix policy. And this looks exactly the same as our backup copy job here. So we choose our name, we choose the policy that we'd like to send over. We choose the repository or the disk type that we want to send it to. That could also be a cloud repository presented by a cloud provider. And we can get down to that GFS, that grandfather, father, son retention policy as to what we need to keep. The last thing to show here is that because of the nature of the license, and we're going to touch on this shortly when Brian gets the wheel back, is the ability to use this one accelerator. Basically, what this allows us to do is there's a concept of a zero socket license. If you are just an AHV environment and you don't have any other VMware or Hyper-V or any other Veeam within the environment, then we'll provide a license as part of this that will open up all Enterprise Plus features for the AHV environment. So we can start to leverage things like one accelerators at that point to really compress that data as it moves through into that secondary location, and then set a schedule, and then off that goes. Also, so from a recovery, this is where we have to come again for that file level recovery for that application item level recovery. So if we jump into the disk, again, we're going to see that Veeam backup job for AHV. We'll see that set amount of restore points. And if we right click on that, this is where we've got the options. What do we want to do? How do we recover that? So first up, we've got the ability to instantly recover that to a Hyper-V machine. That means that we're going to take that backup file, we're going to present it directly into a Hyper-V cluster, if you have that, and we're going to spin that machine up, running from the backup repository, and then you can use the native tools, quick migration, live migration within Hyper-V to move that into that Hyper-V environment. Great for testing, really fast for being able to spin up a segregated environment in there. We can also export those disks as VMDKs, VHDs, VHDXs. I'll come back to the restore the guest files after we've gone through everything else. The ability to now send those VBK files and restore those as your virtual machines up in the public cloud. Coming in update 4, we'll have the ability to also do that within AWS. So being able to spin that machine up in the public cloud for either migration purposes, but more likely going to be around test and development, again, giving more leverage of that data. And then we can obviously also remove from configuration, delete from disks. And the other thing I wanted to show is, how does that backup chain look? One of the questions that we got asked last night is, how does that file look? So we start off with our full backup, which is our VBK file, and you can see that that's taken up that 12.3 gig. Thereafter, we see these VIBs, there are forward incrementals. So the concept of forward forever incrementals is the only backup chain that we have within. What we can do within that web interface is push a bespoke active full at any given time that you want to be able to do that. But ultimately, this is a forever forward incremental. So you can see the changebot tracking has come into effect here, and we're only actually backing up 30 meg, which will be log files, etc., that are just moving parts within that system. So if we dive back into that restore guest files and we And what this will do is allow us to pick the restore point that we want to restore from. We give it a reason for auditing purposes. And what this is going to do is going to take that VBK, it's going to mount it to this VBR server, and then we're going to get the interface open that allows us to go through and see inside of that VBK file or inside of that virtual machine. So here you'll see my C drive and the Explorer from that. Now, if we come in here, and this is just a user folder that we want to recover, you've got the ability to copy that or explore that. And what that Explorer does is open a Windows Explorer and allows you to go in, and then you can manipulate that file however you wish. Where this differs is that because Veeam backup and replication has had no influence inside of the taking of this backup, we don't have that right-click option to restore application items. However, when we come into here, you'll see up in this top ribbon that we've got application items. So if we wanted to then go and restore an individual item out of our Active Directory, we can add from that backup file, we can add in our, and for demo purposes, I'll put them in the root, but we find that NTDS database and we then mount that within our Veeam Explorer. Now from here, we're going to see our, at the point in time, application system backup of our Active Directory. Our domain controller lives on that AHV cluster or within a domain controller. And within here, we can then see our machines. We can right click on those machines and we can restore them back into our production, or we can export them to a different location. Now, the clever part here is that we've also got the ability to compare that selected object. So compare that against the live running Active Directory farm that we have in production. So if you've had a malicious attack on your AD, we can now compare this backup file to your production. So if an administrator has come in and he's accidentally deleted the whole of that LHR directory, then we can compare that and say, okay, we know that all of this has changed since that last backup. We should recover all of that. And we can do that from within this Explorer. Now, just one other Explorer to show here. So all of them are working exactly the same way. They fire up the Explorer. We have to add in our Exchange mailbox or EDB or whatever that database may be. So for this is our EDB, and we mount that. And then we get to see that whole mailbox database. We can drill down into Han Solo's inbox, and we can start to see those emails that we have there. We can then still do the same there around restoring. We can open that file and we can see what Princess Leia has been saying to Han Solo, and we can recover the items out of that as well and save that. All of this, and this is the key point, is that all of this has been captured in an agentless fashion within the HV cluster. What Brian mentioned around where we bundle the agent in is if you don't have the ability to truncate those logs natively, so SQL, we can use maintenance tasks to truncate those logs, but some admins, some infrastructure admins, some SQL admins will want to have that all contained within the same backup set. So with that, that's when we would promote the use of our agent, which comes as part of the same license that you're buying. So, and then with that is we then close that down, and then that's the recovery aspect of that. And then with that, I'll fire it over to Brian again so that we can touch on the licensing piece that I just touched on. I've just made you presenter, Brian, so you should be able to.
Thank you, Michael.
And there we go.
Very informative. Okay, we're going to walk through some licensing and pricing. If you have any questions about licensing or pricing that's not answered here, put it in the chat box or contact your local Veeam person. We actually created a very extensive FAQ for our internal people to answer practically every existing scenario you could think of, because the licensing and pricing I think has been very generous. Now, the licensing itself, like I mentioned before, is when we license on a single SKU, we we've kind of got away from having multiple versions of SKUs you could pick from to be able to have certain functionality. We said we're going to include everything in one SKU, period. That's what it is. One SKU does it all. So you get the Veeam availability for Nutanix AHV, obviously the proxy capability. You'll also get a set of Veeam agents, to Michael's point, in case you want to have that additional transactional capability, or if there's no guest tools installed. And we've also included Veeam Backup and Replication Enterprise Plus with 0 counters, because we said some people might not have Veeam at this time. So it's really designed to be able to hit any kind of environment. Someone put in the Q&A saying, do I need a separate backup repository for AHV? And the answer is no. If you have an existing repository that already is running for VMware or Hyper-V, and it happens to be Enterprise Plus, you could point it towards that and basically have a shared repository. So we really try to make it as simple as possible. We just included everything for people that say, if I don't have anything or if I have everything, we're going to ship you everything, so you can pick and choose what you want. Make it simple. So the other part too, customers, you haven't asked it yet, but I'm going to ask the question. All right, I have a VBR, I have Veeam Backup and Replication, but it's not Enterprise Plus. Can I still point my AHV VMs to it? And the fact of the matter is, it's like, what we'd like you to do is you can point it towards there, but you won't get that additional functionality like Explorers if it's not Plus. So it'll still work. You will still point it. You can still restores, but the Explorer capability won't be there and some other key features. So what we suggest our customers to do is, if you want to have a common repository and you want to you have an existing environment, just upgrade your existing licenses to Enterprise Plus, and you'll be fine. And also, I have I'm going to talk about migrations too, because let's say you're an existing customer that has VMware or Hyper-V, and you say, boy, I just bought these licenses, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago. I would love to trade in some of these licenses for AHV. We're going to allow that to happen free of charge, as long as it's Veeam Backup and Replication Enterprise Plus. So, boom. So let's say, for instance, the way we're doing this right now is moving more towards a subscription license. Well, the reason why we did that is because Nutanix is doing that. Plus, customers like yourself, want to consume it more like a cloud offering. And so we're kind of upscaling this whole concept. It's more subscription per VM. So if you need 2, 3, 5, 20, 100, you don't have to guess about how many can I support per socket. You now basically buy the number of VMs you want, and you're off and running. Now, if you want to stay with socket-based licensing, we could take care of that too, but you'd probably need a VP approval, from the Veeam side to make sure it happens if you're existing customers, but I don't want to muddy the waters. So it's more on a subscription per VM. So I want to support 100 VMs. We're going to ship you obviously the 100 VMs AHV stuff, 100 agents just to be sure, and a 0 counter backup and replication Enterprise Plus license all in one shot. So it's no additional SKUs. It's no, one from here, one from there. It just comes inclusive. Whether you need the agents or not, you'll get them, which is kind of nice. The licensing SKU and how we're going to price it. Production 24/7 is included to all the prescriptions. So you don't have to worry about the maintenance stuff and picking the right things. You'll get 24/7. This is an enterprise offering. And whether you want 1 year all the way up to 5 year, whether you bill upfront or annual, you could see that that's the cost per VM. And the more VMs, the more the years you want to be able to support these things, or whether you want to be billed upfront or annually, the less it is. So let's, for instance, you want to bill upfront maybe 3 years. You get like close to you get a 20% savings from existing environments right there. Or if you want to bill annually, you still get a savings, but it's not as much. So it's a very unique offering that says, based upon your need and how you want to consume it, we try to make it as simple as possible. And as I mentioned before, if you wanted to stick with your socket-based environment, say, that's the way I consume it now, I don't want to do subscription, contact your local Veeam person. We could also make that happen. But this way of subscription makes it a lot easier, and it also matches what Nutanix is actually rolling out for their software offering. Everybody's moving towards a cloud type deployment, and that's the way we design this whole licensing scheme. Now, we talked about trade-in. I'm an existing Veeam customer. Love it. Running VMware. I want to take some of my VMware licenses and swap them over to AHV. I'm not going to swap everything at once, or maybe I just want to swap part of it because I want to test things out. So we could basically trade in. You could trade in some of your perpetual license for subscription license. So let's say you have a socket license. I have one socket license and I want to trade it in. We'll give you 20 subscriptions. That's how it works. And that's actually very, very generous. If you look at other vendors that do this type of thing, the ones we've seen out in the market is, per socket environment, you get like 10 VMs. We're basically giving you twice the amount of numbers, twice the number of VMs. So it's really designed around investment protection for you. If you invested in Veeam, you want to make sure that your investment's safe, and we'll be able to move those licensing over for no cost. So that is what we're doing. There's other caveats. Obviously, you might have other versions of software. If you want to say, how does my software fit in? When can I do this? What's the cost, if at all? Just contact your local Veeam person. We'll walk you through the different scenarios. So this is a different pricing scheme you're probably used to. If you know anything about Veeam, like Office 365, everything tends to be moving more towards subscription per VM license, because that's the way the customers want to consume it. That's what we heard. Michael already beat me to the punch, as they say. The download, I use this directly from the page itself. Michael pointed you towards the actual download. This is the Veeam availability for Nutanix itself. This is a page on Veeam if you want to find out more about it, what's involved, product overview, videos, things of that sort. You also have down below the download free trial at the bottom. So you could click on that. Fully functional. We didn't basically cripple it in any way or take away functionality. It's a fully functional product for 30 days. You could try. If you like it, you buy it. So that's how it works. And there's the URL itself. Woo. So hopefully this was educational. I think we're 5 minutes before the hour. What we had done is this is an enterprise class offering. Nutanix is very excited about Veeam working with them. Their customers, yourselves, the ones that I've talked to, are very excited the fact that we've collaborated. I think Michael mentioned this is the first version of it. We're both involved in roadmaps. I've seen some questions about, hey, will I have centralized management if you will in the future? Well, that's something we're discussing on the roadmap and where it belongs. What we're asking you is this product will evolve based upon your input. You have certain needs, or you have certain things for your business environment. Maybe you're an existing Veeam customer that says, boy, I really could use this functionality that doesn't seem to support it. When's it going to be available? Contact Michael or myself. Make your needs known. Let us know who you are, what the account is, give us a little business background so we can justify it. Michael and I are working directly with product management to help steer the roadmap. We'd love to hear from you. Customers are going to tell us what they need next, not engineers. I know it's not to be insulting engineers. No one really knows what you need unless you're your shoes. So let us know what you need. I think it's an incredibly functional product right out of the chute to begin with. I think you'll be happy with it. Customers that have deployed it, I've heard absolutely no complaints at all. I did hear from a couple people say I would like centralized management. I have multiple clusters out there, some local, some remote. Boy, it'd be great if you had one console. I hear that loud and clear. If you have that same concern, let your needs be known, because that's one of the things that I want. It's all about me, evidently. So at that point, we're going to do some Q&A. Michael, you there?
Yeah, I'm just beavering away trying to answer everyone. The first one that comes up is it. Yeah, so the first one that comes up is it. I did not see instant VM recovery to VMware, so that is not a feature that's available today. We also don't have that within our agents. if we wanted to be able to convert that virtual machine into a VMware virtual machine, it's a case of converting it to VMDKs. The process is just not as simple as the instant recovery to Hyper-V. There was another one around, I think you mentioned around the repository per cluster, but ultimately just to touch on that is there's no best practice around you have to have a repository per cluster. You could have one global repository and send multiple clusters workloads into that. So there's no caveat around having to have multiple repositories. So for example, if you're going to a particular device that allows you to gain some sort of dedupe, now in the best practices, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are certain dedupe devices that are supported out of the box, and there are certain ones that we suggest that they won't work as well in this instance. I can't remember what they are, but the user guide will touch on that. But there is no reason why we have to have separate repositories. Another thing that has been mentioned in the questions is around Sure Backup. So there are three things that are kind of being highlighted as we're seeing the customers rolling this out. One is centralized management that we've touched on quite a bit. One is replication, so our own Veeam replication, to be able to send it from one Nutanix cluster to another. We don't have that in version 1, but we are looking into how and what we can do there. But there is Nutanix native replication that allows you to at least have a disaster recovery plan against that. And then the final one is around vPower NFS. So vPower NFS allows us to do things around instant VM recovery, Sure Backup, and our data labs. That, again, is not in version 1. What we need is that feedback, whether that's direct to us or whether that's in our forums, forums.veeam.com, just that feedback to say, we'd really want that, or even to your local SE or SA to be able to drive that feedback into us, and that we'll feed that back up into product management. There was another one around, so Christo, you mentioned around integration with Veeam Availability Orchestrator. First person I've heard asking around that. Now that's in itself a very new product for us. Is a version 1 itself, VMware only today. I'm not as aligned to that roadmap as I am with the AHV piece. I would hope that I will feed that back into product management to see if there's something we can at least do. But without the replication piece, that puts a full stop on that to begin with. But it's definitely something that we have to consider. I think that's it, Brian, and I think we're at the top of the hour.
Perfect timing, Michael. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for attending this session. I think people say, will I get a copy of the slides? Will I get we're going to send you a link to the recording and also the ability of downloading the slides and I think the Q&As too. So we want to thank you for your time. We hope it was useful. Feel free to send us your needs, as I mentioned before, about, we're both involved in the roadmap. So we want to hear from you about what you need for your business needs, and if you can, provide, your name, even the account that needs it, and even possibly, the size and how many VMs and servers. The more detail you can give us, the better we can make a case to product management. So that's what we're asking of you. Tell us a little bit, and we'll work it into the roadmap depending on the business need priorities and also the engineering heavy lift involved. So once again, thank you so much for attending the session. Thank you for your time. And Michael, as always, great job, and I appreciate your support. Cheers all.